Hey guys, so you should have picked up your copy of the new Unit 9 packet. Yes, we're skipping Unit 8 for the time being. We're just changing the order up a little bit so that we're not in the middle of a really big unit when we get to like keystones and things in the spring. So we're still going to get through everything. We're just kind of changing the order in which we're covering. The plan for today is we're just going to do a little bit of review about multiplying and dividing with radicals. Something that in theory you probably saw in Algebra 1, but maybe not, or maybe we forgot. If you are asked to multiply things that have radicals, what that means is you are asked to multiply things that have square roots. That means you want to multiply the outside and the inside separately. There will be numbers in front of square roots. They will multiply together. There will be numbers inside of square roots. They will multiply together. So if I look at number 1 and I multiply the outside, that means I'm taking 2 times 6, which is 12. Inside my square root, I have 5 times 8, which is 40. What we then have to do is then we want to simplify our square root if possible. So this means I'm taking that 40 and I'm breaking it down. So I could use the 5 and the 8, or I could do 4 times 10, 2 and 2, 2 and 5. And so if you remember from when we did this earlier in the year, remember numbers that have pairs will move out front and the single numbers will stay inside. What we have to consider though is the fact that in front of my square root there is already a 12. Now I have a pair of 2's, so I'm going to bring a 2 out to join it. Inside my square root, I have a single 2 and a single 5. And so all we're going to do then is multiply things back together. So 12 times 2 is 24. 2 times 5 makes 10. So that's my final answer. If I take the same approach to number 2, in front of a square root, there's always an invisible 1, just like a variable. So here I have 5 times 1, which is 5. 3 times 12 is 36. Now, I could take and make a tree for 36, but 36 is a perfect square. The square root of 36 is 6, right? Technically, this is 6 times 6. So you could consider that a pair. So if I have a 5 out front and the square root of 36 is 6, I actually get a whole number answer of 30. So you might have a square root that simplifies like number 1. You might have something that's a perfect square like number 2. Or if I look at number 3, in front I have 5 times 3, that's 15. Inside I have 2 times 3, that's 6. So even if I try and make a tree here, 6 is just 2 times 3 and there's no pairs, that means that my square root does not simplify. And so 15 square root of 6 is my final answer. So you might have any of these things happen once you multiply. So what I'd like you to do is hit pause on the video now, and I want you to try number 4 and number 5. I will give you a hint on number 4. You can think of it as just having a square root of 1, kind of like there's an invisible 1 in front. Technically, there would be a 1 inside the square root if it's not there. So go ahead and hit pause and try 4 and 5. So if I multiply the items on number 4, 2 times 4 makes 8. 5 times 1 is still going to be 5. Can't do anything to the square root of 5, so again, that's my final answer. Here, I'd have 6 times 1 is 6. Inside, 3 times 3 is 9. Well, the square root of 9 is 3, so this is 6 times 3, which means my final answer is 18. So the main thing to keep in mind when you're multiplying, just multiply sort of those like items. We multiply the numbers in front, the numbers on the inside, but we always want to simplify our answer if we can. The other item that we want to take a look at today is what's known as to rationalize the denominator. Basically, this means you're dividing by a square root. And we don't want square roots on the bottom of our fractions. It's sort of one of those math no-nos. So step one is you're actually going to multiply the top and bottom by the root in the denominator. So the denominator is your bottom of the fraction. So whatever square root is there, that's the square root we're going to multiply by. So if I look at my example, I have 4 over the square root of 2. So I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by a square root of 2. So 4 times the square root of 2 for the top. 2 times 2 gives me the square root of 4 on the bottom. I'm then going to simplify the root. At this point, you have a square root on the bottom of your fraction, but what you have created is a perfect square, meaning you can take that square root. So when I look at my example, I'm not going to do anything to the top of my fraction, so 4 root 2 is going to stay, but on the bottom, the square root of 4 is 2. So now I have a whole number on the bottom of my fraction, which is our goal. We don't want a root down there, we want a whole number on the bottom. Once we have that whole number on the bottom, step 3 says to simplify the fraction. Now that I have a whole number on the bottom, it can simplify with any whole number on the top that is not inside a square root. So when I look at my fraction now, I have the 4 on top that is not inside the square root, and I have the 2 on the bottom. So I'm going to perform that division. I'm going to say 4 divided by 2 is 2, and then the square root of 2 is still behind it. Sometimes that won't divide or simplify, and my blue fraction that was there will actually be my final step. If instead of a 4 on the top, that had been a 5, for example, 5 root 2 over 2 would be my final answer. Do not create decimals. So if I take the same approach down to number 7, I have the square root of 3 on the bottom. I'm going to multiply by root 3 on the top and bottom. So that gives me a 15 root 3. 3 times 3 becomes 9 on the inside. So 15 root 3 square root of 9 is 3. And now again, we divide if we can. So 15 divided by 3 is 5 with a square root of 3. Number 8 has a square root of 2 again. So I'm going to use square root of 2. So that gives me 13 square root of 2 on top. 2 times 2 becomes 4. Take that square root on the bottom. Square root of 4 is 2. So here's what I'm saying, how sometimes it doesn't simplify. 13 divided by 2 would be a decimal, so I'm not going to divide. That fraction, 13 root 2 over 2, is going to be my final answer. So what I'd like you to do is take a moment. You can hit pause on the video, but I want you to try questions 9 and 10. So hit pause and try 9 and 10. So running through 9 and 10, we're going to multiply by the square root of 5 on the top and bottom. 10 root 5 over the square root of 25. That gives me 10 root 5 over 5. And 10 divided by 5 is 2 with a square root of 5. Last one, 18 over the square root of 3. So square root of 3 gives me 18 root 3 over the square root of 9. The square root of 9 is 3. And I can divide. 18 divided by 3 is 6. Square root of 3. So like I said, some of this may have looked familiar, maybe not, but it's still working with square roots, which is something we're going to use in this next unit. So ultimately, there's no homework in your packet, but what I'm asking you to do is go back to Canvas, complete the posted quizzes on Canvas for your credit. That is considered your homework assignment. It's going to be a normal homework set of points. Just make sure when you get in to complete your quizzes, make sure you are, if you need to enter a name, make sure you are entering your actual first and last name so that you get the appropriate credits. So take care of the quizzes and then you're good for your weekend, guys. See you back on Monday.